As overlanders and travelers in general, we believe in the old adage that the journey is the reward. That while an adventure must have a destination, or at least a spot where you turn around, it really isn't about where you end up. It's the things you do along the way that are the real gift. But this summer, we chose to set our sights on Alaska, the Great White North. We knew that driving to such a far-off place would be a test of our stamina and grit. It's a vast distance to cover in just a few short months. Our goal was clear. It was Alaska or bust. But while we had a very clear destination in mind, we also wanted to enjoy the journey as much as we could and take in the sights, sounds, and smells of the Canadian portion of our route. While being present and in the moment is easier said than done while striving for a challenge, the Canadian landscape made for an incredible adventure and proved the old proverb correct. Join us today for a journey through British Columbia and the Yukon.
That's some cool ice.
After enjoying Vancouver Island so much that we moved our ferry back to spend more time exploring, we had to keep moving north. The summer season is short in the north. While the days are endless, they pass quickly, and we felt the pull to get to Alaska to soak up the short season. We are often torn in this lifestyle between wanting to get somewhere, but also wanting to slow down and soak up every place we go to. As lucky as we are to be spending this time on the road, unencumbered by full-time jobs or major responsibilities, we still feel the pressure to arrive at a destination, to fast forward over the mundane, knock out the miles, and check the next item off the bucket list. It goes to show that as humans, we are hardwired to be striving for the next goal, the next step on the ladder, whichever ladder that may be. But thankfully, our truck doesn't go very fast, and there are a lot of beautiful places, amazing people, and incredible animals to see along the way to help us savor every moment. We ferried off Vancouver Island and then made our way to Squamish, British Columbia. We'd heard about Squamish for a long time and were excited to get out and see what it had to offer. We started by walking around town, and then I quickly decided it was time to get on the mountain bike again. Squamish has a vast array of trails, so it was hard to pick which to try. I thought that Vancouver Island was lush, but the trails around Squamish were awash in green. Bruce! Hi! Hi! After a stellar ride, we headed north on the Sea to Sky Highway and climbed a steep Forest Service road. We always struggled to show the steepness of the roads we drive on video. But we know it's steep when we need to use 4-low to make our already low first gear even lower.
Does this angle make my butt look big?
It's huge.
We found a campsite and took a walk around the area, and practiced a new safety item that we picked up for our summer in grizzly country.
Oh my gosh, there's a bear.
Alright, that was 2.5, 3 seconds.
Alright, I'll
That
take
seems
that.
doable.
I mean, if it's charging at you, you're toast anyway, probably. So, I don't know. Better than nothing.
Look at that sexy belt.
After familiarizing ourselves with our surroundings, we clambered up the rocks behind our campsite to get a better look at the mountains around us. We found that we weren't the first people to have this idea, and that the friendly travelers who had come before us had left some chairs to watch the nightly show. What unfurled was a majestic preview of what Canada had in store for us. Beautiful snow-capped peaks illuminated by early summer alpenglow. As the sun set on our first night back on the mainland, our heads were filled with anticipation of what was to come. What goes up must come down, and the next morning we bounced our way down the mountain. This is likely not breaking news to you, but driving from the US through Canada up to Alaska is a very long distance. In fact, it's a similar distance to another drive we did, from Colorado to Massachusetts. But thankfully, this drive is not on busy interstate highways, but instead on mostly 2-lane roads snaking through mountains and forests. To get to Alaska before winter started its return, we needed to move faster than we prefer. We were soon headed north from Squamish, through Whistler, and then onto the Duffy Lake Road. This road reminded us of our favorite mountain passes in the States, but it felt even more remote. Honestly, it was a challenge to drive straight through this area without stopping. But we had to keep reminding ourselves that we were on a mission, and that we could always come back to the places that we were skipping. We soon entered a different landscape after crossing the Pacific Ranges. The mountains turned to hills, and it was clearly a drier climate. There was a small wildfire burning near the road, which we hoped was not a sign of what was to come. After passing through the mountains, we did some routine maintenance on the truck and got caught up on video editing in preparation for a whole lot more driving. We kept moving the next day, driving through beautiful rolling farmlands. We eventually got to a mountain bike destination that we had been told about by some friends. Interestingly, many mountain bike trailheads in BC offer camping on-site or nearby, and when your camper is your home, this means you suddenly live on trailfront property. We got a couple rides in, enjoying the fast and flowy trails that Burns Lake had to offer. But before we got to ride them all, we were forced to retreat to the camper because of heavy rain. While we knew this rain would be appreciated to knock down some of the wildfires in the area, it also made the trails unrideable. we walked around the campground, enjoying a few dry minutes to take in the lake. We kept traveling north, visiting our friends Derek and Ancha, who live near Smithers, BC. We got out for a bike ride and toured the town. By this point in our drive, we thought we would have seen some bears, but we'd been skunked so far. And after hearing this, our friendly Canadian hosts took us to a local wildlife sanctuary where we got our fill of baby bears, deer, moose, and more. As much as we wished to stay longer with our friends, the road beckoned us to continue putting on the miles. But just a few hours after seeing bears in captivity, we finally got our first wild bear experience of the trip. This was also the very first time that Heather or I had seen grizzly bears in the wild, and encountering this mother and her 3 cubs was a very special experience for us. Seeing these majestic creatures was a huge bucket list item, and we looked forward to seeing more wildlife on our journey.
We are now on the Cassiar Highway, one of the main routes up north. I think our next stop will be a left turn on the Alaska Highway. We're here for at least, I think I said like 400 kilometers, something like that. So quite a while. BC is big. It's very tall. It's amazing how far we've driven in this province and how much farther we have to go before we get to the next Canadian province and then Alaska after that. The scale of this trip has started to hit us of just how remote some of these places are. We were just in Smithers for a few days and we just left town after seeing the bears and we didn't think, oh, we should probably get groceries. Bit of a mistake. So thankfully we've got some reserves in the back, but yeah, there's not a grocery store for quite a while now. So we're going to be eating rice and beans and some prepared foods that we've got, which is all right.
We kept putting on the miles and eventually crossed into the Yukon Territory. In the stretch of road between Smithers and the Yukon border, we saw nearly a dozen bears. It was at this point that we really felt like we had entered into the wild north. Sometimes when we travel, we have rough itineraries and have done a moderate amount of research on the places that we want to experience. But sometimes we go into places completely blind. The Yukon was in the latter category. We knew next to nothing about this giant area and instead relied on a few tips that fellow travelers gave us on our way up. The first tip we got was to see the world's smallest desert. The Carcross Desert is just 1 square mile in area. You can basically see the whole thing just by walking out a short ways. We took the truck out onto the base of the dunes and remembered what it's like to drive on sand. Here's a question for you. Do you take the time to read interpretive signs? We used to skip over them, but as we came to realize that we may only visit many of these places once in our lives, we've come around and now are interpretive sign hounds. It also leads to knowledge that you might not otherwise learn.
All right, so smallest desert on Earth is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not actually a desert. It gets too much moisture every year to be called that. But, I mean, it's kind of a desert.
After our time playing in the sandbox came to an end, we found camp for the afternoon. And since the sun wouldn't set until 11:30 p.m., I decided to listen to another tip from fellow travelers and headed up into the Alpine on my mountain bike. As you may know, there was a massive gold rush in the Yukon around the turn of the 20th century. While most of the prospectors left after just a few years, what remained was the equipment they painstakingly hauled up the mountainsides. I was amazed to find this machinery 10 plus miles out into the backcountry.
Look at that.
And I got a sense of the adventure those prospectors had when the trail was covered by a steep snowfield. By the way, this was in July.
Really don't want to slide down this. That would be unfortunate. Whew. There, almost.
My efforts were eventually rewarded, and I enjoyed an hour-long descent, passing from the alpine tundra back down into pine forests. From Carcross, we were spitting distance to Skagway, Alaska, so we decided to make a quick detour over the border and check it out. We had gotten so used to the remoteness and quiet that BC and the Yukon had to offer, so when we arrived in Skagway, we found ourselves experiencing a new form of culture shock. 2 giant cruise ships had docked that morning, and thousands of passengers had descended upon the gold rush town. Everything was a bit overwhelming. The town was cute, but while we had planned on staying a night there, we quickly retreated back to Canada. Once back on Canadian soil, we found a campsite we've been talking about for months. It was right on the side of a lake, and I mean literally. We got our tires wet maneuvering into the spot. At this point, the wind was ripping, and we were unsure if we wanted to stay. But the spectacular view promised a great sunset, so we set up camp.
Happy 4th of July!
Hey Heather, what time is it?
Golden hour.
But actually, what time is it?
Oh. 10:07. It's looked like this for about an hour and a half, and it will continue looking like this for about an hour and a half. We are very close to a midnight sunset up here.
Going to bed while the sun was still out was a new experience for us. It felt wrong to waste daylight on sleep. But with 20 hours of light per day, we just had to rest at some point. The next morning, the wind was still howling, so we headed into Whitehorse. Thankfully, the wind was calmer here, so we walked around and enjoyed some sun and culture. That evening, we camped along the river and got to check out the numerous float planes docked nearby. Small planes are a huge part of life in northern Canada and Alaska. As we've come to find out, the distances between towns are vast, and the roads are full of potholes and frost heaves, so oftentimes flying is the best option to get around.
So we've been in Canada for almost a month now, save for 3 hours in Alaska the other day. It's been awesome. There's such good mountain bike riding. I wasn't really expecting such fantastic riding. I knew that there was good riding in certain places, but just like every single stop we go, there's riding, and it's awesome. We've also started to pick up on some of the Canadianisms. We've been really liking the A and the hey. We didn't really know about the hey before this. We just thought about the A. We're not quite sure about the difference between the two, but it's one of our favorite sayings now, hey?
So, this video has more mountain biking in it than all of our others combined. BC and the Yukon are phenomenal places to ride. And I promise the rest of our videos won't be so riding heavy. But we just had too much fun to skip this segment.
I should let go.
In our videos, and in our travel in general, we like to get off the beaten path from time to time. Do things that take a bit of extra commitment and effort compared to the standard items that make up the internet checklist for areas. On our mainland Canada leg of this journey, we hadn't yet ventured out very far from paved roads. And the time and distance before we crossed into Alaska was growing short. But we saved the best for last. We knew we'd be crossing through Kluane National Park, which is one of the largest and least frequented parks in the Canadian National Park system. We also knew that we wanted to go for a hike in the park to experience what it had to offer outside of the visitor center and roadside stops. But beyond this, we didn't have much of a plan. So we stopped into a ranger station and asked for some advice. Call us crazy, but after a lengthy conversation with many options presented, we decided that a 3-day, 40-mile backpacking route that terminated at the top of a mountain sounded the most interesting to us. We purchased a permit for camping and got our gear ready. That night, we slept in a nearby roadside parking lot, took a swim in the lake, and got to bed so that we could get an early start the next day. We got moving in the morning, excited about the prospect of adventure.
Have your nose.
It was a Monday, so we ran into just a few people who had taken a long weekend and were leaving the park. They shared a few tidbits of information that had us skeptical about choosing such a big backpacking trip for our return to the activity after 3 years of not doing it.
All right, we've been walking for a little over 2 miles. We saw 2 different groups coming out. A group with 2 dogs that got turned around at the next river crossing. It was too deep for them to cross with their pups. One was a puppy, and it was 2 women who were on the shorter side. So maybe because Dana's so tall, he'll be able to get Bruce over. We'll see. We're kind of like, I don't know, cautiously optimistic about the crossing. We might get turned around. And then the other folks were coming out after spending 3 nights out here, and they said that there's a grizzly hanging out at camp. So, you know, water crossings, bears, couldn't ask for much more.
We soon arrived at the big water crossing that the folks we had met had been turned around by.
The rougher it is, the shallower it is.
It was certainly a lot of water, and frigid water at that, but we thought it might be doable.
First real river crossing. Chained into some shorts and my chacos so that I have dry boots.
As the tallest member of our group, I was elected to be the guinea pig.
Maybe lengthen your poles so that you have more reach.
Yeah. Backpack straps are loose. Poles are long. Alright. Wish me luck.
Good luck. Bruce, you're gonna stay with me.
I prepared myself and ventured out into the water. The first bit was pretty shallow, and not too challenging.
Okay, so far so good. Yeah. Cool.
But the second section was deeper, and the water was moving fast. I walked upstream to a wider, and therefore shallower, section and took the plunge. While the water wasn't too deep, it was moving really fast, and the large rocks on the bottom made it challenging to keep balanced. I made it across all right, but Heather and Bruce still needed to get across. I ditched my pack and returned to assist them and film. Heather picked a spot and started her crossing. The water was a bit deeper on her, but she kept her footing and made her way through without issue. With Heather on the other side, we asked Bruce if he was ready. We were the most concerned about Bruce because of the three of us, his legs are by far the shortest. It took some coaxing before Bruce got into the river, but thankfully, while his legs are short, he's got 4 of them and he's a strong swimmer. We had crossed the river.
Good boy!
And just after we had overcome one of the big challenges of the trip, we were reminded of a second, more omnipresent challenge. Bears.
That right there is some fine scat. What'd the bear eat recently, Bruce? Check it out.
Pretty fresh. Still got flies on it, still wet looking.
Yeah. Probably within the last day or so, right?
Sure.
I would imagine.
Remember all the bears we saw over the last handful of days driving to Kluane? Well, we learned that Kluane has the highest density of grizzly bears in the Yukon, and we quickly saw the evidence.
So that's my size 14 foot compared to a bear print. I think that was a big one.
There was sign of bear all around us, so we kept vigilant and made as much noise as possible, especially when traveling through dense brush. We paralleled the river for a few miles longer, soaking in the incredible scenery around us. We filtered water and took a break before pushing the final few miles to camp.
Oh.
Thank you. That's very nice. You're gross.
Nearly all of the vertical gain to get to camp was in the last mile or so, when we climbed this windy ridge. We saw a dark animal moving on the hillside, but were very thankful when we realized it was just a porcupine trying to get out of the breeze. We crossed the ridge and made camp. Thankfully, the wind had quieted down, so we could eat a well-deserved dinner with homemade chopsticks. Yeah, we forgot utensils. We donned our eye masks to block out the midnight sun and tried to rest, telling ourselves that bears rarely attack sleeping humans. Thankfully, we woke up the next morning having not been eaten by a bear. We started out on the day's objective to hike to the top of a nearby mountain to view the converging glaciers. Heading out, we had smiles on our faces, but inside we were wrecked. The 14 miles the previous day made our limbs heavy and our feet were not happy.
All right, I think we have aborted our mission to get to the top of this peak. We were given a little bit of info about it, but after looking a little bit more at our maps, we're realizing that it's a huge climb and a pretty big day overall, and we're not feeling that up for it, and we also don't have as many calories as we would like to have for that mission plus getting all the way back out tomorrow. So we're just gonna see if we can hike in that direction towards the foot of the glacier and just see if we can get a good view of where the glacier calves off into what looks to be like an icy blue lake. So either way, should be good views. We might not be summiting, but we're trying to normalize not summiting when you don't feel like it's the right choice, because we were both really hard on ourselves about that. And I think we were trying to push ourselves to do it and pretend we wanted to do it for the sake of the other person, and we both just realized that neither of us were that interested in suffering that much today. So yeah, we're gonna take it a little bit mellower and we'll see what we get to see.
Abandoning our plan to hike to the summit reminded us why we're on this journey. It's not to check every item off some list. It's not to say we reached some arbitrary point on a map. It's to know that we ventured out, exited our comfort zones, and truly experienced this incredible world. To look back and remember the sounds, sights, smells, and feelings that we had at a point of adventure and discovery. While getting to the top of Observation Peak would have surely been an accomplishment and would have given us an incredible 360 view, it just wasn't in the cards. And at the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun, and fun is only definable by us. So we ditched our plans and headed in a new direction. Some folks plan their travel down to the minute with Excel spreadsheets and Word documents. They police their precious vacation time with the precision of a Swiss watch. Any hiccup or change in plans is seen as a detriment. And this strategy works for many people. They climb the 7 summits and check off every item that Lonely Planet tells them they cannot miss. But for us, the reason we travel is to regain a sense of spontaneity that is easily lost in modern life. To ditch the plans, routines, and expectations that are required of us to succeed. Heather and I travel to find a sense of belonging and connection with this raw, unpredictable world. A world that is so often unnaturally filtered, distilled, sanitized, and standardized. We go out prepared for as much as possible, but knowing that we cannot be prepared for every outcome.
Not too shabby.
So cool.
Consolation prize, not getting up that mountain.
Going into nature, or any endeavor really, with a single-minded goal or objective is the best way to achieve that target. But in our mind, that single-minded goal forces you to overlook things that might be more spectacular, memorable, or inspiring. Our goal to get to the top of Observation Mountain was just an incentive to get out from the air-conditioned comfort of our home on wheels and experience nature. And reflecting on our time in Canada, our pursuit of Alaska was a similar incentive, an objective to coax us out of our comfort zones and justify the risk, expense, and time away from friends and family.
That's some cold ice.
We learned that the true value of our adventure north would be found not at a summit, signpost, or souvenir shop, but some random spot out in the wilderness. And after bushwhacking through some very berry country, we found that random spot. We arrived at this majestic lake filled with icebergs and realized that this was true adventure.
Lunchtime by Glacial Lake with crackers and cheese and salami. Why are our bags so heavy, I wonder? Because we have to have fancy lunch.
If you've made it this far through my philosophical ramblings, I'd like to say thank you and ask you to subscribe to our channel. We have 5 more terabytes of footage from the Alaskan part of our northern adventure that we'd love to share with you. That evening, we hiked a fair ways back out towards the truck to make our final day an easy one and allow us to continue our journey north. We camped along the river that we were concerned might sink our trip and reveled in the everlasting sunset. The pure exhaustion of our activity had caught up with us, So despite seeing plenty more bear sign, we slept like babies. The next morning began with a quick dip in our cold plunge to kickstart the final few miles of hiking.
All right. Dana's gonna make this look easy because he's so tall, but I was almost up to my waist.
That is cold.
Right?
Ah, it's painful. Oh, we made it, Bruce. Everybody made it. Everybody made it.
He's so stoked.
The water was frigid, but we only had a few miles of hiking ahead of us, so we powered through. We were back to the truck for a late breakfast. Despite traveling through BC and the Yukon faster than we would have liked, we were blown away by these incredible areas. The natural beauty of this sparsely inhabited landscape would be permanently etched in our dreams. While we still had our sights set on our objective of Alaska, we had truly lived in the moment and enjoyed the ride. We had already found the reward of this journey, thousands of miles ahead of our destination. But we were just getting started. Soon we would cross into Alaska, for real this time, and there would be many more stories to tell. We hope you'll join us again soon.
Bye, Canada. See you later.
Au revoir.